Hey everyone! If you're watching, you might notice that Rachel and I are in different clothing than we are for the rest of the episode. We recorded this one recently to highlight a first builder that we believed was in a meaningful role, helping to catapult a company toward a unicorn level exit.
And you might have heard the news that Chime launched its IPO on June 12th, placing our next guest, Maia Bittner, officially in the Chime tech mafia. We know she and her colleagues are going to go on to do great things at Chime and beyond, and we're really looking forward to seeing the startups that are going to be founded by future Chime alums.
Now, this is not only a huge win for Chime's early investors, early employees, founding team, but for the entire startup and venture industry. A lot of money has been locked up in these late-stage successful companies who have been waiting for the right moment to IPO. We're so excited to see some of them starting to take the plunge.
Congrats to Maia and the entire Chime team on the IPO. Hope you all enjoy the rest of the episode about her first builder journey, from startup founder to acquired by Chime to 7 years at Chime and now the IPO. Maia, welcome to the show.
Rachel, Amber, so excited to be here. First builders is a topic that's very close to my heart, I'm very passionate about. So I'm excited to talk some stories with you guys.
Yeah, I can only imagine because you're a first builder yourself. So let's dive right in. So we're going to go, back toward the beginning. One of the first companies, if not the first company that you founded, was the Hikery, a consumer app for hikers. And then from there, it was Rocksbox, a jewelry subscription company, and then Pinch, a fintech company. These are all completely different business models and product types. And could you kind of walk us through the evolution of your decision to found each one?
Totally. So let's jump in with Rocksbox, actually. And with Rocksbox, I joined as the first employee. So I wasn't really a founder. Megan Rose came up with the idea. She started the company and she actually hired me. It was really lucky. Like, I don't want to say that she hired me on a whim, but it was very casual in those early days. And she hired me for what I felt was my dream career, which was being a UX designer. UX designer is not a job that even really exists anymore in tech. Like, you're just a designer now, and it's assumed that you're going to understand user experience. But that was what I was really passionate about and wanted to do. So Megan hired me as this UX designer for Rocksbox, and we were digging the details. I was only going to do it temporarily. I had been accepted to the Copenhagen Institute of Interaction Design, where I wanted to go to get my master's degree to focus on studying how people interact with technology and what are our opportunities to do that in innovative and more powerful human-centric ways. So that was my plan. So I was going to do a couple months at Rocksbox. And what ended up happening was Megan was like, she's like, you're amazing. And I think I was doing more than she expected from this UX designer role. And I have an engineering background and was really starting to build a lot of technology at Rocksbox. Megan had she had built so much on her own as a non-technical founder. And that's actually always one of my pieces of advice for people who are looking for technical founders is do as much as you can on your own, because getting that traction and proving out the user pain points is really what appeals to technical founders. They want to join something like that. And that's really how it was. So Megan had built a website on WordPress. She had this whole complicated operational system running via Excel macros and imports and exports and things like that. And that's how the business was run. And I saw this really great opportunity to use software to help make that more efficient and more powerful. And so I jumped in then. She needed a CTO, I think, realistically for the business, but also kind of there was an optics fundraising angle. She was fundraising, and I think everyone looked at her and was like, your non-technical solo founder would be a lot more powerful with a CTO co-founder. And so she came to me and she said, hey, Maia, I know you're planning on going to grad school, but I really want you to think about the opportunity you're leaving behind here. And I want you to join on as my co-founder and CTO. So I became the co-founder of Rocksbox, but I feel like there's an asterisk or like a little caveat. It's not like as much of a co-founder, it's sort of a junior co-founder role because I wasn't there at the beginning. Megan really started it. And then she hired me as a first employee, which having actually founded companies, like being there from the beginning is really powerful. And it indicates that somebody has that risk appetite. They can jump in and do what matters most and move quickly. But there is a really big difference, I think, between being the first employee and being hired into something early and then actually being the one who started the company and is doing the hiring.
It is not typical. Like I don't hear about it all the time that somebody joins as an employee and ends up getting the co-founder title. But I think in that situation, it makes a lot of sense because you have somebody who has a big plan ahead and, you have to get them away from that plan and they're providing 0 to 1 value in a company with maybe one employee, 1 to 2 employees. So I think that's really interesting. Have you seen that much with other founders you've chatted with?
No, I have. Right. I think what you're saying is pretty uncommon. I did recently invest in a company which had two co-founders, the CEO and the CTO, I believe, and they switched roles, which actually felt, it's funny. As soon as they told me, I was like, oh yeah, and I had even assumed that it was the way that the new way was. And I feel like it was a much more natural fit and that made sense to me. So I saw that they switched who was the CEO. And, even within founding teams, there's some question about the CEO role and how that plays out. Founding team dynamics are super important. And even there was tension with me and Meg because she was sort of the real founder and I was a co-founder in title, but in every way, kind of less of a founder than she was. I had less equity and I wasn't there from the beginning and it was her idea and all of those different pieces. And so I think there was a lot of tension as we were managing that and managing what does it mean for us to show up as co-founders to our employees and to the press and to people that were, all of those different relationships. Yeah. And I also think the founding team dynamics, so much of being a successful company leans on that because without that, you're never going to get out of the early days. And if you don't get out of the early days, you're definitely not getting to big success. And so, yeah, I don't know. You're like, oh, do I see that a lot? And I'm like, no, I don't see that a lot, but probably for good reason. And I don't really recommend it, right?
Yeah. And you also mentioned, right, you were going to do your master's and you had this trade-off essentially. What was it that, about the company that you were at that you're like, you know what, this is the path I want to take versus the other one?
Yes, so many things.
So
So I felt like Megan really had, right? Her idea was really good. And I could tell that people loved it, right? People loved Rocksbox. Our customers would send us love letters in the mail talking about how much they liked the product and how big of an experience we had. And I knew that that was something really special. And my whole thing, right, was about how people interact with technology and how that can make a big improvement on their lives. And here I was working at a company that was actively doing that. I didn't need to go to grad school. So all of this felt very clear. Megan also talked about, she was like, Ma, we work so well together and we are so powerful. I know that we will start a company together at some point if it's not Rocksbox. So we can either do it now or we will do it later. And I don't know. I thought she was kind of right. So it just felt like I could go to grad school. It was an experience that I could sign up for at any point in my life, but it felt like founding a company with somebody I worked really well with an idea that was really resonating with people. You can't call that up on demand. So that's why I chose to do Rocksbox instead.
That's awesome. And one last thing I would just want to kind of comment on. I feel like founding designers are actually having a moment right now. So it's interesting that you had a software engineering background, but you were going in for the UX designer role and kind of taking that path as you were thinking about grad school even. So it makes sense that that sort of mentality was really, really valuable at the beginning because you're thinking so much about what users need. So I think I feel like it's finally coming around that people are realizing that value and they're like, design is actually a role that we need in this company really early on. And particularly the type of designer that can flex into different thought spaces.
I was also going to ask too, I mean, you mentioned that you have, the different kind of tension that was in, the early days, especially being not the, I would say, quote unquote, original co-founder, right? You were brought on as the co-founder as well. And obviously we hear it all the time. It's, the mindset that founders have to have. They have to be really flexible. They have to have that grit, that resilience. I'm curious, for you, was there anything outside of that, that outside of work that brought you joy, kept you sane? Was it the work itself? Yeah. How did you, kind of go through all of that?
Yeah, great question. So at that point in my life, it was rock climbing. So rock climbing was ability, there were times I went to the gym. I think on average, the rock climbing gym, it was 40 times per month or something.
Wow.
I would definitely go every day and then pretty frequently twice a day. So yeah, it was a really big part of my life. And that was every weekend was rock climbing trips out around the bay. So yeah, rock climbing was a really big part of my, for sure. Then when I was at Pinch, honestly, a lot of it was investing, and I say investing in quotes, right? But it's doing those early stage coffee chats with aspiring founders and new founders. And some of that is under this investing deal flow evaluatory lens. But honestly, it was really more about giving them advice and sort of like welcoming them to the founder community and supporting them. And that's one of the things that, should founders angel invest is a common contentious topic that shows up on Twitter from time to time. And for me, I really felt like if I spent an hour doing coffee with founders, that would give me the energy to have like 2 hours at work. So it was actually, it was more about looking at how to keep my energy high and motivation high. And that was a way that was really helpful to do that. While I think sometimes we can be too focused on time and we think like all hours of the day are the same and any hour taken away is, and just realistically, I don't think that's the case. I think very few people are so productive that time is their limiting factor rather than like creative energy.
Totally.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
So we talked a lot about Roxbox and how that experience came together. I'd love to talk about Pinch, which is what you did next, the fintech company. And for anybody listening, so Roxbox was acquired, which we'll get into later, but next came up with Pinch. So I'd love to hear more about what Pinch did and what made you decide to solve that problem as a founder early on.
Yeah, let me talk to you about how we came up for the idea of the Pinch and how I did that transition from Roxbox. At Roxbox, I was working on we called it, I did a bunch of different roles at Roxbox. So I was a CTO. We hired in a VP of engineering at some point, and I really passed off, we had built a team of 7 engineers. At the time we hired the VP of engineering, and then I really passed off management of the engineering team to our new VP of engineering. I went and focused on operations at that point in time, since that was really what was killing us. Sort of redid our operations, pulled it up, and then hired in a VP of operations to run that. And then I worked on the next weakest point, which is actually my real passion as a person and a professional and a founder, which we called the VP of customer lifetime, but it was really working on retention, on working on NPS scores, right? Like how much do people like the product and do they stay with us? And so I was a really, right, parallel, we had our VP of growth. And so she was responsible for getting new signups and I was responsible for having them stay. And I did a ton of projects on retention. I really love this space, really love building products that people love. But one of the things that impacted our retention, we were a subscription product, and credit card failures would cause people's subscriptions to be canceled sometime. And this was a space I really didn't understand. I found kind of confusing. And so I did what any user-oriented researcher would do. And I said, I'm just going to call some people up and learn more about this problem space. And so I called up some Roxbox members who had recently failing credit cards. And I said, hey, this is Maia from Roxbox. And I'm just looking to understand, did your credit card expire and you need to update it with the newest information, or what's happening here? And what I heard over and over again was a huge surprise to me, but I think maybe not a surprise to a lot of people in the industry I now work in, but it was that they didn't have the money to pay for their Roxbox subscription. That was why their credit cards were failing. So either they had a debit card and the charge was being declined because they were out of money in their account, or they had a credit card and they were at their credit card limit and the charges were being declined for exceeding their credit limit. They really wanted to pay for Roxbox. They still loved the service, and they would sort of conspire with me on how to get the subscription charges to go through. So they would say, look, I get paid on the last day of the month. And so I pay my credit card bill down then, but it doesn't get processed until the 1st. And so if you run the charge through on the 1st, it should go through and then I can keep my Roxbox subscription. So we were doing these sort of conversations like this, which I thought was very interesting. But the problem, it just felt so big and so novel. It felt so important and interesting to me. And it felt like no one I knew was talking about this problem space. And I also felt a little bit like, I had been so excited about everything we achieved with Roxbox and our growth was really good and we had all these signups. But to see that people were in debt or literally trying to spend their last dollar with Roxbox didn't actually feel good. Roxbox is renting costume jewelry, right? And I don't know, you're not supposed to judge how people spend money and it's this whole thing, but like, I am judging it. I feel like the experience I created at Roxbox is not what you should spend your last dollar on. And it's not worth going into debt. And actually, like, it kind of negatively tainted all of all the executive meetings I was in that we were looking at our conversion rate and what ads were performing and things like that. I'm like, we are converting people who cannot afford this product and should not buy it. And we had a whole, I thought the product was good. I had worked there for years. We had this whole thing about empowering women and being able to wear different types of jewelry without having to commit to purchase it. And they're saving money long-term because they're not buying all this stuff. All these things were sort of running through my head when my best friend from college reached out and he said, "Hey, Maia, we've always talked about starting a company together. I'm thinking about leaving Twitter and looking at my next moves. Where are you at with Roxbox?" And so it was that perfect timing. I was like, I just kind of, and I also think sort of a privilege of not being the real founder, right? I could leave Roxbox, and not like it didn't kill the company for me to leave because I wasn't the founder the way that Meg was, right? Like Meg could not leave Rox. I don't know if she'd ever thought of it, but she wouldn't have had that option. And I sort of like had done my tour and left to go found Pinch, where we wanted to explore like what are the opportunities for software and tech to help Americans be more financially stable. With Pinch, we actually first thought it would be an insurance company. Insurance was really hot at this time. Lemonade had recently raised a ton of money. People were very excited about the opportunity for tech to impact the insurance market. We thought we'd create like a modified property casualty policy. So there's like basically a renter's insurance policy. And we wanted to help cover the financial risk that people are actually facing. So these are the things, it's like people were living on the margin. They had very little like extra buffer. And there were these situations like getting their car towed that would then sort of push them. It's like, okay, well, if their car gets towed, they don't have enough money to take it out of the tow yard. They don't, right? So it's racking up fees. Then they can't get to work because they don't have their car. Then they really don't have enough money. Look at things like that. So we looked at designing this policy and kind of got started on it, and it was this huge flop. Like nobody wants to buy insurance. People don't want to buy optional insurance. Car insurance is required, and not everyone even buys car insurance. A lot of people are just like scooting by on the edge and hoping that they don't get pulled over. And then particularly for our user base, which was people who don't have a lot of extra money, selling them on an insurance policy that they may or may not ever use was a really hard sell. So we sort of scrapped that, went back to basics, and we were like, look, lending is really the right solution. And we didn't want to be lenders, but lending's really the right solution for if your car gets towed, right? You should borrow money. You should go get it ASAP. Do not rack up fees and daily charges. Keep going to work to earn more money and then pay back your loan. And so we were like, if lending is the right product, why does this problem still exist? And that's how we kind of discovered credit scores. And we found that millennials have the worst credit score of any generation at their age. They're sort of uniquely affected by the student loan crisis and a couple of other big macroeconomic situations. And so people weren't able to affordably borrow money to pay for situations like this. We looked at what your credit score is often mortgage, it's an auto loan, it's credit cards, it's kind of composed of the different ways that you borrow money. And so we looked at what they are spending money on, and they're spending money on rent. And so that's sort of how we got to the product promise of Pinch, which is we built the best way for people to pay their rent, which included reporting those rent payments to the credit bureau so they could build their credit score by paying their rent. But also we had all of these automated features around financial fitness, including like if you got paid twice a month, we could automatically pull out half of your rent out of each paycheck and then lump it together into that one rent check, right? Rent was usually the largest bill that people had. Usually they get paid more frequently. A lot of people are doing things like having their entire last paycheck go to rent and then trying to live off the other paycheck. So we did smoothing and a bunch of features around that. So that's sort of how we got from me looking at retention with Roxbox and running into this financial stability problem that Americans are facing. Went through insurance, which was a bad idea, that we raised a bunch of money off of that idea, and pivoted into credit score improvement, which was such an obvious change in kind of product market fit and market demand, right? The response for credit score improvement was way, way stronger than anything we even saw with our insurance product. And so we felt pretty good about it.
It's awesome. And I've seen that from so many first builders too, by the way, like the type of folks that go in, they have an idea and they quickly realize, hey, this isn't going to work. But by even executing on that, you realize what is the thing that is going to work. And then you're kind of the captain that's trusted to guide the ship toward that route. So that's awesome.
Because that's my personal background. And yeah, you do see that a lot. Like I do really like founders that have kind of had a similar, like they get excited about building something, they have an idea, they realize it doesn't work, And then they use the data that they learned from that idea failing to build something bigger. So yeah, I'm very bullish on this founder profile. And I also think, I had spent so much time working on member experience and retention and product experience for Rocksbox. I thought that meant I knew how to build a compelling product, but it's like the fundamentals of Rocksbox are a pretty good business, and Meg had figured that out, right? And she had figured that out with her background, and she had so I'd kind of gotten that for free, and I don't think I took it for granted, right? I knew it was special and it was enough to avoid or turns out like totally not go to grad school for and things like that. But all of that focus on NPS, it's like NPS doesn't matter if you don't have any customers because they don't like your pitch, Like I had been so focused on like a little bit later stage of the funnel. And so it was really eye-opening to go through those like early phases of what do people want in a product.
Yeah. And I love that focus on like the customer retention side. My background is in customer success. So for
Yeah.
any like CS retention account management folks out there, like just hearing how you are talking about like how much that feeds really into the product experiences, the nuggets that you can actually pull out that you have made some assumptions potentially before, right? Like based on the activity. But when you actually go and talk to the customers, you figure it out like, hey, they still are trying, to get the product, even when it was just, not going through. So, I love that like, insight that you're getting really like on the customer success, like retention side as well.
Yeah, that's like my whole history. I'm so passionate about. And I think part of it is I'm so frustrated at a user anytime I run into bad product experiences. And I'm like, you should
Yeah.
know better. You should talk to people. You should do better.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's the type of founder I want to be.
Totally.
Awesome. Regarding the type of founder you wanted to be, what do you think about your background made you more likely to be a founder in the first place? Because not everyone is willing to take that risk and sees the opportunity and jumps in. So just curious if there's anything that pops out to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. In hindsight, it feels really obvious. And even like all through school, like everybody joked it was like we're all going to be working for Maya one day, right? And like, like in middle school and high school. And so it feels sort of obvious in hindsight, but it didn't feel obvious at the time. I think so. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life or my career when I was looking at colleges to go to. People asked me, they were like, well, what are you good at? And I was like, well, I'm pretty good at math and science. And people said, you should become an engineer. So I ended up at Olin College. It was a new school. I was part of the 5th class, the first class ever, graduated in 2006. I joined as part of the class of 2010. Yeah. And they thought like, education is broken, or it is broken, particularly for engineering, right? And engineers are coming out of college and they're coming up with the same solutions to the same problems. People don't know how to think outside the box. They don't know how to work as part of a team. They're bad at communicating. Like America deserves much better engineers, and we are going to make that. And so the whole, this really appealed to me. It was also free, no tuition. And so I went to Olin, and my summer after Olin, I got a summer internship at an internet startup. And I had always loved the internet. I sold things on eBay all throughout middle school and high school, which was a big part of that time of my life. I was very into like alternative web browsers like Opera and Firefox, which was actually called Firebird at the time that I was using it. I didn't know that that was like a job that people could work on these cool internet things. And it's like technology was always like, I always loved technology. It's funny, I just had to clean out my bedroom at my mom's house. And I have all these things from like 2nd grade about, it's like Maya has to choose a topic and like she's doing like technology. It's always tech, 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 tech. Like tech has been my whole life. I've always loved it. I literally didn't know that this could be a job when I was in high school working in tech. And it was my summer internship at an internet startup, which was awesome. And actually kind of a similar thing. I ended up dropping out of school and staying on for them. That I was like, this is like, it was so clear to me that that's what I wanted to do and that's where I wanted to work. And then I ended up going back to college and getting my bachelor's degree, but I always knew I was going out to San Francisco and I was going to work in tech startups. And so I was very focused on that. I never thought of being a founder, and I kind of tripped into it, right? I was just a very early employee with Meg. I thought what she was building was really special and I was really excited about it. I worked my ass off. That's just kind of my personality and childhood trauma, but like works well in the tech industry. Then she invited me to be a founder. And I think I was pretty young to have been the founder of, right? Rocksbox went out and raised Series A, like raised $10 million. And I was pretty young to have that experience. And so I do think I kind of tripped into it. As soon as I was a founder, I was like, this is it. Like this is what I'm meant to be. And I'm sort of, I'm kind of like anti-establishment and stuff like that. And I think I don't always work well for other people. I don't think I'm a great employee. I think I'm a much better founder than I am an employee.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting when you talked about like also like going to Olin College as well. Because I noticed actually that you are focused, like I think one of your like investment funds that you work with, right, is really focused on like Olin founders. And there's a lot of discourse today about like Silicon Valley based founders versus like Ivy League based founders as well. And obviously you're kind of going against like maybe the grain on that by investing in the non-Ivy League founders. What do you think like, those types of founders at Olin or outside of the Bay Area have as an edge?
Yes, I think Olin alumni make exceptional founders. And it's really, what's a couple of different things. If you look at the type of person that goes to Olin, basically they all got accepted to Ivy League schools or MIT, which is not Ivy League, but kind of more relevant in the engineering world. And so they all got accepted to like much more prestigious schools with a much bigger brand name that their grandparents recognize, rather than this random school no one's ever heard of outside of Boston. And yet they chose to go to Olin anyway. And I kind of think it's that makes, well, that's one of the factors that makes them really exceptional founders. It's some kind of like thinking for themselves and, not going for the brand name success, not going for what other people have deemed as high status, but looking at their own priorities and choosing to do those instead. It's funny, like I feel like I don't know exactly how I want to say this, like in the early days of Roxbox, it was like a bad job. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, right, but it was like all of my friends were making a lot more money at Google, right? All of my friends had graduated from Olin. Olin actually has the highest average starting salary of any four-year undergraduate institution in the
Wow.
United States. Their alumni make a lot of money and people really love them as employees. What everyone says is that hiring a new grad from Olin feels like hiring somebody like 3 or 4 years out of school because they have the skill set to work as part of a team and all of those other skills that Olin facilitates. And it's just engineering. So they're technical people, right? They join like Google and Facebook as engineers and product managers, and they make a lot of money. I was working at Roxbox, a company no one had ever heard of and making not that much money. And it then became much bigger and everyone's really impressed and they're like, wow, you're a founder of Roxbox. But you have to go through that time where like, it's a pretty low status role. And now, I think culturally being a founder just in and of itself is kind of higher status, but I think a lot of people know in those early days of founding something, it's like not that high status, right? If you haven't raised any money and you don't have any customers, you don't have any employees, you don't have any press messages, it's not an impressive thing. And you have to be able to make it through. So I think part of why Olin alumni make great founders is they've already gone through that experience of turning away from the brand name and doing what's important to them. And I think that's that's the experience I found is you're turning away. You could go work for Google, you could go work for Facebook, and instead you're going to start your own thing. There's that.
Yeah.
Then of course, like it's an engineering school. So they're all technical. And I think like if you create, they tried to create, they're like this engineer of the 21st century, which is an engineer that can think outside the box, communicate, solve problems, work as part of a team, be ambitious. Like it turns out that's really great. I mean, maybe it's the engineer of the 21st century, but it's also really incredible founders. And we've seen that, right? There's only about 1,000 people that have ever graduated from Olin College. But if you look at the percentages of alumni that have got on to found companies that have raised 10 million, 100 million, $1 billion, it's like they're much higher percentages. Sorry, I don't think anyone's raised $1 billion, but they have companies worth $1 billion.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's like much higher percentages than alumni from
That's really cool.
Stanford and
Yeah.
things like that. So like it is, I think the numbers are there. It's a very small school. Only 75 students graduate per year. So it's very, very few people. But they've founded some big, impressive companies so far. They've certainly had some like big, I'm trying to think, I think like 9-figure exits. Skydio is worth a couple billion. That was founded by an Olin
Awesome.
alumni.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
That's
Yeah.
super cool.
So there's been some big companies like I've invested in a bunch of early stage companies with the fund, and I feel very good about it. It's been a big focus, and it feels awesome to work on. In part because Olin, it's still not the brand name, right? I think it's easier to raise money if you graduated from Stanford than if you graduated from Olin, and so I want to help give people, it's a leg up, but only to be a level playing field.
Yeah. And when I heard you talk about it, it really sounds like it's like the mindset piece of it. Like I love when you mentioned like, hey, they chose to do this. And, I mean, it's the same thing like for the successful founders, like they had to really choose it and also understand and know what they're almost like getting themselves into a little bit as well. So, the fact that they've chosen something against the grain so early on probably will give them that same, again, that mindset to like, when they found a company later on to continue and persevere.
Exactly. I think being a founder is like, it can be very lonely. It can be very hard. It can be very low status. And it's funny, I don't hear people talk about status much. It's like kind of not okay to talk about status, but it is a big part of our lives and communities. And I think it impacts people really deeply. And it's funny, I felt it myself, which I think being the founder of Roxbox and then the founder of Pinch are like much more high status than now, which is like, I actually still work at Chime. I work at Chime. I have this like tiny fund that I raised with the really specific investment criteria of Olin College alumni. And I'm a partner at XFactor. It's like I've got some cool things going on, but it's like less high profile, less visible than when I was a founder of Pinch or the founder of Roxbox, right? So it's kind of lower status. And it's funny, I feel like people are often asking for like, what's the big cool thing I'm building? And I'm like, I don't have a big cool thing that I am building at this point in my life, in this phase of my life. And people try to be like, oh no, but actually, like I feel like they're trying to be like, no, you're still all this big thing. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, look, I never really cared about other people's assessment of me and the work that I'm doing. And I didn't care about that when I joined Roxbox as the first employee. And I didn't care about that when I got promoted to being co-founder. And I didn't care about that when I left Roxbox to start something new. And do you know what I mean? Like, and now I am right. Like, I feel like now it's like I have this like random job. I'm like this like low level independent contributor for a random company. And I'm like, I've got these little things and I still don't care what other people think about me. But it's funny to see like those reactions. And I do think it's a big, it does like, I have to say, like, it felt a lot better when 10 times a day people would tell me like how cool and impressive and precocious and smart and how incredible it was that I was a founder of Roxbox, even though I was only 24 years old. Like all that feels really good. And I think for some people going from a position like that where like if they're at Google or whatever, right? All of your parents' friends
so
have
true.
heard of Google. They're very
Yeah.
impressed. To go from that to I'm the founder of,
Company
Silence.
you've never heard of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've never, it'd be really rough for people. And a lot of people
Totally.
are not prepared for that drop.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you mentioned that too, because I've seen a lot of tweets from folks being like, well, my parents just discovered my job is real when they read about it in the New York Times, like 5 years into the founding journey. So
Years
you're
in.
so on point. Like it's a low status role. It's not glamorous. You're doing like all the grunt work, not just the cool stuff like the fundraising and the sales and the product stuff, but there's just everything that you need to do behind the scenes. So I like that you were kind of in it for the right reasons and you've had that DNA, even when you were at risk of getting addicted to it because you were in a high profile role, you're still like, you know what? I don't need to have that extrinsic value attached to what I'm doing in order to be working on something important. So I think that's really important for a lot of founders. And even at the council, like one of the top 3 things we look for is like alignment with the mission and like in it for the right reasons, because I find that like you said, a lot of founders from Stanford and the Bay Area can raise capital very quickly, but can they build a sustainable business past just raising the capital for a business? And some of them can, but it also, you get weeded out at a certain point when you have to show the metrics at Series A and Series B. And so I've definitely seen like founders outside of the Bay tend to have that. If they're going to do it, they're doing it for a reason sort of thing. So it's super cool to hear that.
Yeah, there's so many interesting, and I think this part of your kind of thesis on how amazing these first builders are, right? Because if you're one of the first employees of a startup, an early stage startup, you've probably already been through that experience of like that's kind of low status too,
Yeah,
working
you've
for a
had to do
company no
it.
one's
You've
ever
been
heard of.
through it. Yep.
Yeah.
You know what
So
it
it's
takes.
less of a drop to found a company. I also, I feel like in some ways I was lucky that because I feel like I work at Chime now, I work for big tech. It's like really, I don't, okay, I was gonna say it's really cushy. I don't want to say it's not like, there's all this stuff about like email jobs. Not quite like that. But what I mean by cushy is like, if you want to hire someone, this is probably all your list, probably everybody's worked for big tech and everyone's like, why is this news to you? Okay. But if you want to hire someone, right, you like come up with a job description and then your recruiter posts it and your recruiter reaches out to people and your recruiter phone screens everyone and your recruiter identifies like promising candidates and then surfaces them to you. And then you bring them in for an interview loop with you as the hiring manager and also a bunch of other people who are relevant. And like, that is really nice. Like, I'm like, damn, I see how a person could get used to this. If you are hiring for an early stage startup, like, I mean, just it is so much work. And it's funny, people are like, oh, if you like building things, you should be a founder. I'm like, no, if you like recruiting, you should be a founder, right?
Totally.
20% of your brain all the time, including while you're sleeping, needs to be thinking about recruiting, needs to be thinking about like, who are the ideal candidates? Why would like, what are they looking for in their next role? How can you sort of like squeegee your company into the shape of what they want in their job, right? So it's like you've got your dream candidate and you're not going to get them. So like who's kind of like your dream candidate? They've got 80%, but they've got some rough edges and they don't want to work Tuesdays and right. And like taking them out to drinks and going out to drinks and going out to drinks and going out to drinks and selling people on like what you're trying to build and do it. Like, I mean, the recruiting is just relentless. And this is if you're so lucky to have the resources to hire people and to be growing quickly enough to justify hiring new roles. But you do so much recruiting. And my first experiences hiring people in big tech, I was like, dude, this is so nice. And there's a lot, like all of that infrastructure. You have a whole IT team
totally.
that deals with
It's crazy.
all the annoying IT stuff. And you've got, right, like it's just,
Legal,
it is really nice.
like
Yes.
all of, knowing that things are compliant, like all of those
There's
things.
even like a compensation team. You don't even need to think about it. You just like, approve at the end. Yeah.
You just like approve the like offer.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't even think about how much to pay this person or like come up.
Totally.
So I think there's a lot of weaknesses in this approach. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for startups to hire really incredible talent by outmaneuvering recruiting teams at big tech. But as somebody who like now works at big tech, I'm like, dude, this is like it is really
Nice setup.
luxurious. Yeah, I don't want to use the word cushy. I want to use the word luxurious.
Yeah, it's a
Sounds
nice
like
setup for sure. And and speaking of which too, it's really interesting because it's very rare to see founders like stay at their acquirer for as many years as you did. What was it about Chime that made you want to stay aside from the luxurious, setup that you had?
Totally.
Recruiting.
I mean, I was only going to stay a year, and the Pinch acquisition, it happened really quickly, really, 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 really quickly. We worked really closely with Satya, who was the partner at Homebrew that led our pre-seed round. And we met with him usually every 2 weeks and had all the updates on our product and things like that. And at some point, he was sort of like, guys, this is not working. And he was like, you need to go back to the drawing board. And maybe it's not even fintech, but you need to kind of start again from scratch, come up with a problem and build a solution to it. Like maybe it's a problem you have personally, but like this is not working. You need to bail on it. And so my co-founder Ducker and I, we talked about it, and he was jazzed. He was like, we're going to go figure out all these ideas. And I was like, not jazzed. I was like, look, I've spent a lot of time in early stage. Like I've spent a lot of time doing customer interviews and prototyping websites and coming up with that. And like, I don't know, like I really want to be scaling something. I really want to be doing that work of improving a product that has product market fit, but turning it into experience people really love. And I don't know that I'm ready to go back to square one. And so we talked about, I was like, you can have all my equity if you want to keep going as a solo founder. I was like, I don't think there's anything here. And then we decided to shut the company down. Like truly cannot explain to you how quickly this happened. Like I think it was June 18th that we met with Satya. And then like June 21st, we decided to shut the company down. And we had money in the bank too. Like we totally had enough money for another go round. So we weren't out of money. We were out of, like I said, it's that energy and enthusiasm. We've been doing it for 2 years. And this is something I tell people a lot, is that I feel like you kind of most people have about 2 years of like pushing something forward without other enthusiasm for pushing forward the flywheel. Like you need customer energy or press or investors or employees, like somebody else helps to help you push this thing uphill. If it's just you, like you kind of run out of steam after 2 years. And so we were there and I was like, look, if this can technically be an acquisition in any way, that would just look a lot better on my resume than if it's just shut down a company. And so we were like, okay, we'll try to sell a company, and we're going to try and do it really fast because we know we have the money in the bank and we don't want to burn down all of our money trying and failing to be acquired. Like, we want to just give it back to investors if that's where we're at. And so we sent out like 50 emails to like it was like every fintech company, and then just like a couple other companies that, you know, might do fintech stuff that could be relevant. Like, I think we emailed a friend at Airbnb and Corp Dev and things like that, and sort of ran a process. And we told people that we had to know by the 4th of July if they were really interested. And we ran a super quick process. And I think it was done with Chime and all wrapped up like by July 25th. All the legal paperwork and stuff took some other time. I started working, I think, August 15th for Chime. And yeah, and so it happened really fast. I had not really thought. So I was like, I'm going to spend a year there. Part of the reason why it happened so quickly is Satya at Homebrew. So he had invested in Chime. That was a homebrew company. And he sort of architected a lot of that acquisition behind the scenes, which I think investors often do. And that was, and we loved, like, I had met Ryan King some years ago at a homebrew portfolio founder dinner when we were just getting started. And I wanted to join Ryan and Chime at that time because I thought Ryan was like really, I still do. Like, Ryan is just like outstanding person. And I was like, this guy is something else. Like, I want to go work for this guy. And so, yeah, I wanted to join Chime at the very beginning of our pinch journey. But my co-founder, Michael Ducker, right, this was his first company. And he was like, no, I want to do the startup thing. He's like, if you want to join like a smart person, he's like, there's a lot of smart people with like interesting companies I want to start around. And I was like, that's fair. Like, that's what I signed up for with you. Let's do that. And so then, yeah, when it like wasn't working, we came back with our tail between our legs to join Chime. Ryan is awesome. We felt like the people at Chime, I was like so nice. We like accidentally kind of sat in on their weekly all hands because it was at the same time as one of our meetings. We're like, the energy here is so good. These people are so nice. Like, let's land here. We had 3 requirements for our acquisition. We wanted job offers for both Ducker and I. We wanted equity for our investors, and we wanted it to technically count as an acquisition, right? We wanted to be able to say we were acquired by Chime, not like we talked to Stripe, and Stripe was like, you cannot say that you were acquired by Stripe if we do a thing. And so we were like, okay, it's something that we want. And so yeah. And I was like, okay, we'll be here for a year because I need to spend the next year like figuring out now what, right? I was like sort of the founder of Roxbox, and Roxbox had like a really like mediocre exit to a public jewelry company. That was sort of the founder of Pinch, and Pinch had this like mediocre exit to Chime, which is a big fintech company. And I was like, given that this is, I feel like I need a year to get my head on straight and figure out what I want to do with my career and like what are the next steps for me. So I was like, I'm going to be at Chime for a year. I am still at Chime. So it was 2018. It's now 2025, right? It's like 7 years later. And the answer for why I'm still at Chime, honestly, it's different at different points of Chime. But yeah, I really like it. And Chime, it's grown so quickly. For one, I feel like being at Chime has like whacked me upside the head. And it's been a really important lesson as a founder on like, this is what product market fit looks like, right? Like really everybody like just hanging on by the skin of their teeth, like as it's growing, like just, and it's almost like it feels like, I feel like we made a bunch of mistakes at Chime, and it feels like even if we screw up, like all of the numbers are good. Do you know what I mean? Like growth, it's like, it's almost like you cannot stop the growth and the amount of money it's making.
Yeah, you have
like,
downward
obviously,
momentum instead of like pushing a ball up a hill.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, if you can, right, it's a push a ball downhill. And it's like, if you can push it faster, great. And like, there's been a bunch of successes that have done that. But even if you do nothing, it's still going. And even if you do the wrong thing, like it's not enough to stop this ball from going downhill. And so that I think has been like a really awesome lesson for me. I think growth and like, there's a quote by a poet, right? Chaos is a ladder. I think like when a company's growing so quickly, it's like there's a ton of opportunity. And it was just like, it's just really exciting to be at a company that is growing so quickly. And to be, it's funny, like at the time I didn't feel early because Chime was raising, it's like they'd raised, I think their Series B, and then they raised their Series C soon after we joined. So for me, it felt quite late stage. But it's funny now, there's a bunch of people at Chime who are like, Maia's been here so long, like since the beginning, like it doesn't feel like the beginning for me because I know what the actual beginning looks like. but I think I was employee like 75, and Chime has had, I don't know, like 1,200 employees or something like that.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's like, it's fun. It's exciting. Right. Like, I feel like I don't know. I just really love my job. I work from home. I work on like really interesting, cool problems with really passionate people. I feel like I have a ton of control over what I work on, and I get to do things the way that I like, right? Which is like in this high quality way. And I get to do the thing that I'm really passionate about, which is like making a product experience that people love and at a really big scale. I think so I think like in the early days, I mean, I was like, I'm just going to be there for a year. So I was sort of just like hanging tight and learned a bunch of new things, and then had a bunch of cool opportunities. And then I feel like at this point in time, I think I have like a lot of cred at Chime, and people trust me, but that means it's like, I don't know, I'm just so excited to go to work every day, and I'm so excited to like think about the problems that I'm working on. And like I said, I was like, I don't think I'd be a very good employee. It's because like, if you ask me to do something that I don't want to do, like, it's basically like, I'm not gonna do it. It's basically impossible. Like, I have no ability to do something I'm not bought into. And I'm not talking about like, I'm just like, unethical things or anything. I'm literally just talking about something that like I don't think is important. Like,
Yeah.
it's impossible for me to get that done.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, my job, I get to work on stuff that I think is super important. And then when there's stuff that like I don't think is important, it's like everybody's got to do the whatever. I'm like, I think that like this doesn't apply to me, and I'm gonna opt out of that thing that I don't think is important. So that's why I've been there for so long. I also think like, well, when I first joined Chime, I felt like my history. So I felt like Roxbox, I had created this experience that people loved, but it wasn't actually like a great business, right? It was very operationally intensive. Margins were low. Like, it's not a great business. Then at Pinch, I had also created a product that people loved, and it also wasn't a good business. And I feel like, right, we brought this up several times, like, I'm so passionate about good user experiences, but you have to marry that with compelling business models. And I think it's easy to forget. I think particularly in tech, like our first big business model of tech was advertising. And the way that advertising works is like, as long as you make something that people like, you make money. Like, as long as you make something that people like, Facebook. If people like Facebook, if they spend enough time on Facebook, if they keep looking at Facebook, Facebook makes money because they sell ads when people are looking at Facebook, right? But like, not all businesses work like that.
Yeah, and probably it generated so much thought pieces from that era that like founders get that advice today, like just build something customers love and it's gonna take
And
off.
it'll work
Like,
out.
yeah, build it and they will come.
Yes.
But
And
yeah,
I felt like I had built two product experiences that people loved, right? We were one of the like, we were on like Lifehacker, one of the top downloaded apps in the Google Play Store, like all this stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a great business. What I found compelling about Chime is frankly, it's like the business model. Like, the business model is my favorite thing at Chime. Part of it is like there's some regulatory arbitrage and things like that. It's like a little bit like not that pure, but business model is my favorite piece of Chime. So most of Chime's revenue is from interchange revenue. Interchange fees are the fees that merchants pay to accept credit cards. The bulk of those fees actually go to the issuer of the credit card, which in the case of Chime credit and debit cards is Chime. So Chime gets interchange revenue. It's a fee the merchants pay to accept the cards. So Chime gets to offer a product for free or like very low fee to its customer and make a bunch of money from merchants, but merchants don't really have a say in it, right? I think if we look again at Facebook's business model, Facebook builds a product for consumers. They want people to like it a lot, and advertisers pay them. In some sense, advertisers are Facebook's real customer. They're the ones that are paying money, and Facebook needs to serve the advertisers to be a good business, right? They have to like serve up the users like intent and clicks and wallets in order to make money. But Chime, the merchants are not like the real customer in that same way. Chime doesn't have a relationship with merchants. It's all mediated through Visa and other credit card networks. Like, and interchange rates are kind of like they're set, and there's like a schedule, and there's some negotiation. It's a tri-party negotiation. Like, it's complicated, but it's not like Chime and the merchants have a relationship, and Chime is like really serving up our customers to the merchants the way that I kind of think Facebook serves up its users to advertisers. And so I just felt that I was like, this is so cool. Chime is able to make a product that like the more people use it and the more money they spend on Chime, the more money that Chime makes, but without having to charge Chime members anything because it's all funded by merchants. I just thought it was the coolest thing. I love the business model. So when I joined Chime, we talked about like where in the org I should be. And I said, I want to be on the finance team, right? I don't have a finance background, but I really felt like I was missing that piece about how to create a really compelling business. And when I look at like, dude, how am I going to found $1 billion business in the future? I feel like I've got the skill set to make like product experiences that people love, but I don't know how to create that business model that really works in the same way. So I actually joined Chime's finance team. I was there for the first year. And then there's a bunch of transitions and reorgs and stuff. We brought in a new guy, chief business officer, I report to him, things like that. And it was our SVP of product was like, hey, Maia, like, I know that you're on the finance team, but you are always highlighting these like high friction user experiences and like these pain points that you've heard people talking about that is like really compelling for us and has really helped us step up our product experience. Like, how can we make this your full-time job because you're creating so much value? And I'm like, yeah, this is my thing, right? Like I was trying to address a weak spot by being on the finance team, but like really that's my jam. And so I actually joined the product team and I started a team at Chime called Voice of the Member, which, and then grew that to be, a bigger team and stuff like that. And so Voice of the Member was really focusing on like, identifying pain points and surfacing those and getting them fixed and things like that. So like I ended up doing that at Chime, but that's not how I started. I started on the finance team because I found their business model really compelling. And I was like, this is a skill that I need to be a big founder in the future.
That's awesome. First of all, two things. Number one, thank you for sharing your kind of process for getting acquired, because I feel like a lot of companies go through that. Like, of course, as a VC, we imagine that every company in our portfolio is going to go through an IPO or like a multi-billion-dollar exit, but we know realistically that's not going to happen for most of the portfolio. And a lot of acquisitions happen the way that you just shared. And I think, not many people talk about their exact experience like that. So I love that you shared that. And even just the tactics of like, what are the steps you go through? And then second of all, that experience at Chime, just scaling from like, I think you said 75 to like 1900 or something employees, just seeing that level of change within an organization while you have downward momentum and true product market fit is like, an incredible, it's like a window into a world that some will never see. And so it's just super cool that you've had that experience. So we're going to transition into a rapid fire round. So we're going to ask you some really quick questions and you're just supposed to say the first thing that comes to mind. So I'll let Rachel kick off.
Yeah. Best early product that you've ever used?
I don't have a good answer here. Like I'm going to say superhuman, which I feel like is a big cliche and not that interesting, but that's my answer. That's what I think of.
Awesome. And favorite founder ritual or productivity hack?
I'd say like going on vacation or retreats. With the same like ideas, like you have to focus on like your energy and enthusiasm and momentum there. And often what people need to be more productive is they need to take a step back.
Is there one founder that you would back in any market?
Lots of all-in founders and lots of people. I would say like most founders, I've often backed people and not even known what company they're building.
Awesome. And you have strong opinions on parenting that you've shared online. What's your hottest take?
Probably just that this is, again, a cliche and makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist. But I do think it's important to remember that like nobody makes money off of saying like promoting the parenting philosophy that you should just like kind of wing it and do what seems right to you. But that I feel like is like my parenting philosophy. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And it has been really successful for me. So yeah, that's my parenting philosophy is like just wing it. Do what seems like the right thing to do. And I think more people could embrace that.
And then last one, would you ever found a startup again?
Yes, I think at the moment, yes, totally. I'm very excited about that. I do think like my fund is a startup, I don't know. I had to like incorporate.
Yeah, you have to found that.
Yeah. It was harder to raise money for the fund than for my last startup, but that's okay. I like doing hard things. And I would love to, I'd love to found a startup. Right now, I'm excited about founding companies and not raising venture capital. So sometimes when people say, would you found a startup, they mean venture backed specifically. And I'm kind of more excited about founding outside of that ethos. I feel like I've done that. I was not that successful. I learned a lot. It was super fun. I know I have this big drive to build a big business, but I'm not sure that, and I mean, I love VCs. I do investing myself, right? But like, I feel like that's not my next path.
That's awesome. And especially with AI, it seems like that's more possible these days too.
Got it.
Okay, so we're going to transition to founder's wish list. If you had a magic wand, one thing you would fast forward for number one, yourself, and number two, the future of fintech and AI?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like fast forwarding AI in general is kind of an answer. Like there's so much of these. I use AI like quite a bit. And like a lot of it freaking sucks, I have to say. Like a lot of the coding that I do with AI, I'm like, this is
I
garbage.
agree.
It's so bad. I know. And like everyone's talking about like all the success they have. And I'm like, I'm not having the same experience. The same thing with writing. Like, I feel like it's really helpful to have AI make a first draft. And then I basically rewrite the entire thing. Like, I don't use any of the AI words. It is a helpful productivity hack to have it do the first thing, but like all of the words end up being mine in the end because it's are too bad. And so I don't know. I feel like there is a bunch of cool stuff that can happen with AI. We need to focus on, like, I think the agent stuff is cool. And I think making a version of the web that agents are able to operate, which a lot of people are talking about, like, I'm excited about that. I'm like, let's skip forward to when that is reality. And like AI agents can really easily navigate the web and accomplish things really like that. I'm very excited about. The future of fintech, I actually think, I don't know, I'm excited about like, and there's a lot of talk about employment opportunities in the US, but I don't know. I'm excited about fintech's role in, it used to be called the gig economy, and then that went out of favor. There's a creator economy, and I think that's on the outs now. But I'm still really I'm really excited about the possibility for software and technology to help people make money in ways that fit in well with the lives that they want to live. I think Uber was huge for this. Uber, like, you don't have to schedule it in advance. You just turn on your app. Like, you can make money any time of day, any day of the week. You don't have to, like, that's so powerful. I even think like working in Amazon warehouses is like kind of a shit job from many perspectives, but from others, it's like, look, you can do it as long as you want to. You can kind of do it from like anywhere in the US because like there's Amazon warehouses everywhere. There's all of these advantages. And I think tech has like we still have so many constraints around the ways that we work that like chafe with the way that people live their lives. And I think there's the opportunity for tech and fintech to help merge those. And so that's a future I'm excited about. Great chatting with you guys.
And we can't wait to see what you build next. So
Yes.
excited.
Stay tuned.
And where can people find you also? If
On
they wanna follow
Twitter.
you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm on
perfect.
Twitter at Maia B, MAIAB. That's the best place. I feel like the algorithm, it's currently not really favoring my tweets. It goes in and out in phases.
I'm out of style right now.
Out of style.
I might be coming back. I don't know.
I
We'll
know.
see.
So
I try
follow
periodically.
Me. Right. You
Yeah.
may or may not see me in your feed, but that's the best place to keep up with what I'm up to.
Thank you so much, Maia.
Thank you.
Wow, that was fascinating. Rachel, I'm curious what stood out most to you in Maia's story.
Yeah, it was so much. But the thing that really drew me was how it was so important to think for yourself in this ecosystem. And she emphasized it a lot when she mentioned not liking working on things that aren't moving the needle or that don't align with her personal values.
Yeah, and I think it's that focus on intrinsic value versus extrinsic value, which can get so many founders caught up in the early phases. And I think if there's one piece of advice I got from her that I think translates to our portfolio is that it's going to be rough as a founder. So make sure you're in it for the right reasons because it's going to be low status and challenging for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing too that she really emphasized, and you could just tell she lit up a lot during that, was whenever she talked about the user experience, that delightful customer experience and that retention of the customer as well. And I thought it was really fascinating that even though she had those experiences early on in her career, it really wasn't until she was at Chime that they got that downward momentum and that real product market fit and that pull from their customers to see it take off as well.
Yeah, and I love that you talked a little bit about that rapid growth phase because I believe it's those experiences of not only seeing the inside of a successful company, but seeing it at a time where they were going from like vulnerable to really high growth in a really exciting phase. That's when you really learn things like, do we have true product market fit? What does it really look like? What are the different levers we can pull? And those are really, really valuable things to learn and take into your next experience as a founder if you're going to found a company in the future. So I thought that was really interesting. She mentioned that and, tracks with the sort of people that we look for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you love this episode, please leave a review and subscribe to First Builders and feel free to share it with your favorite operator.
Yeah. And next time, definitely tune in. You won't want to miss it.